6 years, 4,287 phone calls and text messages, one number on a cell phone bill I have been paying for 11 years. I am a construction foreman in North Carolina, married 11 years, two children, 8 and 10 years old. The man on the other end of those 4,287 calls was the godfather of those children. He was my best friend for 15 years. He was the best man at our wedding. And here is what happened when I switched cell phone carriers. I have been a construction foreman for the last 16 years. I am the kind of guy who handles every bill in the house. My wife and I have been on the same family cell phone plan since the year we got married. She is the receptionist at a small medical practice and works 3 days a week. I am the supporting spouse on paper. Our cell phone carrier sent us a notice in early March that they were raising our family plan rate by $18 a month. I sat down at my home office one morning to switch us over to a different carrier. Now here is what I want every man watching this video to understand about your cell phone account. If you are the primary account holder, the carrier will let you pull a detailed call and text log on every single line on your plan going back 12 months. It is a normal feature. It is right there in the customer portal. I had never used it in 11 years. I pulled a 12-month report on both lines because I wanted to make sure we ported the most used numbers correctly. I scrolled through my line first. Nothing surprising there. Calls to my brother, calls to a couple of guys on my crew, calls to check on my mother. Then I pulled up my wife's line, and one phone number stopped me cold. 4,287 contacts in 12 months. That was just one number. Out of every contact on her phone over a year, one number sat at the top of the list with more contacts on it than the next 14 numbers combined. Now, my first thought was, that has to be her sister, or her mother, or somebody from the medical practice. I looked at that phone number for about 30 seconds before I realized I knew it. It was my best friend's cell phone. I had known him since we were 19 years old. He was the best man at our wedding 11 years ago. He was the godfather of my son. He was the godfather of my daughter. He had been at every birthday and every Christmas and every Easter dinner since we said our vows. And he had been calling and texting my wife 4,287 times in the last 12 months alone. That works out to about 11 contacts per day, every single day, for an entire year. I did not move from that desk for the next 20 minutes. I did not say one word to my wife when she came back home from the grocery store an hour later. I closed the laptop. I went out to the back porch and stood there for about 40 minutes, and I started doing math in my head. If she was contacting him 4,287 times in just 12 months, how long had this been going on? How many of those Easter dinners had he been there as her boyfriend instead of my best friend? How many of those Christmas mornings had my children been opening presents from a man who was sleeping with their mother? I went back inside. I made small talk while she put away the groceries. I told her I was tired and that I had a long day on the job site coming up. I went to bed early that night. She fell asleep next to me. I did not sleep 1 minute that whole night. Now, I have lived in North Carolina my whole life, and every man here knows about North Carolina divorce law one way or the other, even if he does not know the statute number. I knew that if I confronted my wife, the affair would be deleted, scrubbed, hidden, and gone by the end of the day. I knew if I lost my temper, I would lose my case. So, I did not say one word for the next 19 days. First thing I did was log back into the carrier portal that night after she fell asleep. I requested every month of detailed billing they had on file going back 24 months. They were all sitting right there in my account history as PDFs, every month going back 2 full years. I downloaded every single one, and I sat there at the dining room table at 2 in the morning watching the numbers go up. 12 months ago, 4,287 contacts. 24 months ago, 4,604 contacts. The volume was about the same every single month, going back 24 months straight. Then I pulled the 6 years of credit card statements I had saved on my computer for tax purposes. I went line by line. Venmo payments to a contact saved as M.J. $300 here, $400 there. She had been sending him money for years. Hotel charges in Charlotte and Greensboro and Asheville on weekends. She had told me she was visiting her sister. Hilton, Marriott, Hampton Inn, sometimes 2 nights, sometimes 3. About $24,000 in charges to the joint card over 6 years that I had never questioned because I trusted her. I want every guy watching this to hear that number again. $24,000 of our money. Then I called her sister one afternoon while my wife was at work. I asked her how many weekends my wife had stayed at her place over the last 5 years. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Her sister told me my wife had not stayed with her one time in 5 years. Her sister said she had been wondering if I knew. Let that sink in for a second. Her own sister had been wondering if I knew. After that phone call, I drove to the bank and put $12,000 of my own savings in a separate account in my name only. The attorney would tell me later that was the smartest thing I did before I filed. I didn't waste any time. I called a private investigator. I gave him $6,500 and told him I needed photo evidence of an ongoing affair. He told me to give him 2 weeks. 11 days later, he sent me an email at 7 in the morning. Subject line, your evidence. He had photographed my wife walking into my best friend's apartment building in Charlotte on 3 separate occasions over those 11 days. Once on her day off in the middle of the week, once on another day off, once on a day she had told me she was working a half shift. All 3 days she had told me she was at her medical practice. She had been calling out of her job at the doctor's office on her own days off and driving over an hour to my best friend's apartment building 3 days a week for 6 years. The private investigator even got a photograph of her unlocking the front door of his apartment with her own key. I couldn't believe it. She had a key. I had everything I needed, but I had not yet talked to a divorce attorney. My brother-in-law had been through a divorce 4 years ago, and he gave me the name of the attorney who handled his case. I made an appointment for the following week at 9 in the morning. I walked into that office with the call records, the credit card statements, the photographs from the private investigator, and the email from my sister-in-law confirming the trips were a lie. He reviewed the information I had. Then he asked me, was I ready to move forward? Because once we filed, there was no taking it back. I told him my wife had been sleeping with my best friend, the godfather of my children, for 6 years. I told him I was sure. My attorney proceeded to explain North Carolina divorce law to me. I knew a little bit, but not a lot. First, North Carolina requires a 1-year physical separation before a judge will grant an absolute divorce. There is no exception for adultery. There is no faster route in this state. It is exactly 1 year of separation, no negotiation. Second, North Carolina has a statute called Section 50-16.3a. Under that statute, if the dependent spouse, meaning the spouse who is financially dependent on the other, commits adultery during the marriage and before the date of separation, the court shall not award her any alimony. He wanted to make sure I heard those 2 words, shall not award, not may not might not, shall not award her 1 penny. The judge has 0 discretion in the matter. The attorney told me my wife was a dependent spouse on paper because she only worked 3 days a week and made about $22,000 a year. If we could prove the affair occurred during the marriage and before separation, which we could, with 24 months of call records and 11 days of private investigators' photographs, she would be barred from alimony permanently. She could ask for it, her attorney could fight for it, but by law, the judge could not award one penny. Third, he told me about something I had never heard of before. North Carolina is one of only 6 states left in this country that still allows you to sue your spouse's affair partner directly. It is called alienation of affection. He told me there had been verdicts in North Carolina ranging from $50,000 to $30 million. I was not going to chase $30 million, but the average settlement in cases like mine, where you have hard photographic evidence and 6 years of documented affair, was usually somewhere between $100,000 and $500,000. He told me the affair partner could not pass the lawsuit off on any other kind of insurance. He would have to pay it out of his own pocket. Then he explained the custody piece. He told me adultery alone does not change custody in North Carolina. The standard is the best interest of the child. But there was a but coming, and he wanted me to hear it. If the affair partner had been around the children and was specifically introduced to them as a trusted figure, the judge would view that as exposure to inappropriate situations under a fitness analysis. I told him my best friend was the godfather of both of my children. He stopped writing. He looked up at me. He said that fact pattern was about as bad as it gets for the wife in custody court. He told me to file 3 things on the same day: separation paperwork, a temporary custody motion, an alienation of affection lawsuit against my best friend for $1 million. We were going to ask for $1 million and settle for whatever he could pay. I wrote him a retainer check before I left his office. We got to work. 11 days later, we were ready to file. But the night before we filed, I made 2 phone calls. The first call was to my best friend's wife. I had known her for 12 years. She had been at every cookout, every birthday, and every holiday alongside her husband. She answered on the second ring. I told her I had something I needed to send her by email. I emailed her 3 of the private investigators' photographs and a single page from my wife's call detail records showing the 4,287 contacts in 12 months. I waited on the line. She did not say one word for about 90 seconds. Then she said thank you and hung up. She filed for divorce against my best friend 4 days later. The second call was to my brother-in-law. I told him I needed somebody to come stay in my guest room for about 2 weeks. I did not want to be in that house alone with my wife the night she got served. I did not trust myself. He showed up the next morning with a duffel bag and 2 cases of beer. He did not ask me a single question. He just unloaded his stuff in the guest room and started making coffee. We filed everything that morning at 10 a.m. I had her served at the doctor's office at 2 p.m. that same afternoon. She came home at 5:30 with the divorce paperwork in her hand and tears running down her face. She walked into the kitchen. She saw my brother-in-law sitting at the table drinking a beer. She looked at me. She said this was a mistake. She said she could explain. I told her she had 7 days to find somewhere else to live during the 1-year separation. She started begging. She said she would do anything I asked. She offered to quit her job. She promised to never speak to him again. I told her she had been speaking to him 11 times a day for 6 years. I told her I had the records. She got real quiet. Then she told me my best friend was not returning her phone calls. I told her that was not my problem anymore. I told her if she wanted to call somebody, she should try his wife. She got up from the table without saying another word. She moved out 6 days later into a 1-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from the house. She took her clothes and her car. She left everything else behind. We separated for 1 full year. During that year, my attorney got the temporary custody hearing on the docket. The judge granted me primary physical custody of both children. She got every other weekend and one evening per week. Her own attorney did not fight it because she knew where it was going. 1 year and 1 day after separation, we filed for absolute divorce. The final hearing was 6 weeks after that. Her attorney filed for alimony. My attorney filed the Section 50-16.3a motion the same week. We presented the call records, the private investigator's photographs, and the credit card statements showing $24,000 of marital money spent on the affair. The judge looked at all of it for about 4 minutes. Then she ruled from the bench. She said the dependent spouse had committed illicit sexual behavior during the marriage and prior to the date of the separation. She said the statute was clear on the matter. Alimony was barred under the absolute bar provision. My wife received not one penny. The distribution came in at roughly 50-50 of the marital assets. I bought her out of her half of the house using a portion of my retirement match. But here is the part that mattered most to me. The alienation of affection lawsuit against my best friend went forward in a separate civil action. His attorney was begging him to settle from the day he was served. He could not pass the case off. He settled for $250,000 rather than risk a trial verdict that could have been $1 million. He pulled most of it from his 401k. His wife had already taken her half of their marital estate the month before. His daughter, she is 12 years old now, refused to speak to him. He has not seen her in 8 months as of right now. And my kids still ask about him. They want to know why their godfather has not been to a birthday in over a year. I tell them he had to move away for work. I do not have it in me yet to tell them what their godfather actually did. Maybe when they're older, maybe never. I deposited the $250,000 settlement check into a college fund for both of my kids, half each. He is paying for their college whether he sees them again or not. That is the only justice that matters to me at this point. Listen, I want every man watching this to understand something. This was not a stranger she met online. This was not a coworker. This was not somebody she met on a dating app. This was the man we trusted with our children. This was the man who held my son at his baptism. This was the man who carried our rings down the aisle at our wedding. And he had been with my wife for 6 of the 11 years she and I were married. The detailed call records had been there for 6 years. I just never opened them. That is the hard part. The truth was sitting in front of me the entire time, and I never thought to look. Watch the small things, pull the records, run the numbers, and if something feels wrong, it is. I lost a friend of 15 years. I lost a wife of 11 years. But I kept my children. I kept my house. I kept my dignity. And the man who took everything from me, he lost his marriage, he lost his daughter, and he lost $250,000 to my kids' college fund.